Hello, I'm Alethea and I'm ready to talk about my body. I'm in the midst of a 36-year-long project to be happy with the body that I have. Editing Alethea here. Just want to impart a quick note that there will be some discussion about things that might be painful for people who have a history of disordered eating, and that I do use some language around negative self-talk that might be painful to hear. Thank you so much. It's definitely been a journey. It's been a difficult journey. Throughout my entire life, I've always struggled with how I look, in what other people think of me. When I was very young, I was teased for how small I was. And as I got older, I struggled to maintain that small size while hating myself for the size that I had. It took a while before I was diagnosed with body dysmorphic disorder and disordered eating. I bring these up because I want to talk about the struggles that go with living in a body. Body dysmorphic disorder can affect equally men and women, but it seems like disordered eating is more strongly noticed in women, and often men are let to go to the side, and it's considered, like, oh, he's cutting for weight build or bodybuilding, or he's working on his gains. Like, it's explained away without it really being assessed as to, or there being concern as to whether or not it's healthy, especially like within oneself. I have a number of fixative habits that I'm not really going to get into. The way that disordered eating applies to me, I'm not going to get into too deeply either. But I do want to talk about the challenges that having both of those labels attached the challenges that can come up when having those two labels attached, and how it's difficult to maintain a healthy balance while still achieving your goals. Right now, as with any other time in my life, I am not happy when I look in the mirror, and I know that I want to change it. I'm also not happy with the numbers that are associated with my body in BMI and my weight. But that has always been true in the past as well, regardless of where I've sat at that scale. So it's really important for me to set goals that are outside of those numbers, to recognize that those numbers are, while useful metrics for professionals who are looking at a whole bunch of different other factors, they're not terribly useful metric for our own sense of well-being. So if one of those metrics puts you into a group, I'm classified as overweight, for example, and that makes me unhappy, but that's just a classification. I was unhappy when I was within my healthy weight, and I was unhappy when I was under my healthy weight. And for the same reason, I was not happy with how my body looked. And it seems that no matter what I do, I am always displeased with that, which says to me that regardless of the change that happens within my body, that is an issue that I have in my mind rather than in my body with how I look. So moving forward, it's really important that I try to become happy with my body in a way that may not necessarily be reflective in numbers. The first thing that I'm doing is I'm making an effort to eat healthier. As part of that, I have implemented intermittent fasting. This is not something that I went into terribly lightly, considering that traits of anorexia are part of my disordered eating. But I have been working with a health professional to make sure that I am staying within the lines, so to speak, of healthy usage of intermittent fasting. The version that I use is called the 16-8, and that's what works best with my work schedule, with the meal schedule that we have here. This helps me to regulate the amount that I'm eating, because right now I am in more of a binge phase where I will consume without actual hunger or any desire to eat. So that helps curb that, I want to say appetite, but it's not even appetite. It helps curb that habit, while at the same time encouraging me to eat healthy during the time that I do have food. And I tend to eat more now of healthier foods within that 8-hour time. I'm also ingesting a lot more water and coffee, but I am drinking far more water. And that was one of my big goals, is that I wanted to drink more water. Water is great for the skin. It helps with water retention within the body. So anything around, like, I tend to bloat a lot during my period and while I'm ovulating. Way too much TMI. Okay, we're getting into detail, but so water helps with that. Drinking water helps with it. It also helps prevent headaches and keeps my mood up, which it seems like a no-brainer, but like the mood thing was actually surprising for me, that it helps keep my mood regulated, drinking more water. And it helps me feel grounded and you know, part of the present. I feel like I can use drinking water as a mindfulness moment whenever I have the opportunity to take a few gulps. Within the intermittent fasting, I'm also eating very healthy. I'm trying to reduce the amount of carbs that I'm bringing in, not because I feel like all carbs are bad, but the quantity that I was consuming definitely was. So I've reduced pasta, reduced rice, reduced breads, but I'm still having wraps and making really delicious wraps, having fantastic fish that the kitchen here is providing, loading up on veggies and salads. We just had this amazing beet salad that was done with onions, so they tasted almost like pickled beets. I've vastly reduced my intake of sugar to the point now where vegetables taste sweeter. So I am retraining my taste buds so that they're not quite as addicted to the pastries and the cookies and all of the delicious things that the kitchen here loves to provide for us. Oh, and the cheesecake. Oh my God, I miss the cheesecake. The cheesecake is so good here. That's not to say that I am denying myself. I am allowing myself to eat treats when I feel like I want to indulge, and I do recognize that it is an indulgence. It is not a part of my food groups. It is not something that I'm going to regularly do. It is not a reward either. That's something important, that I don't keep food classified in the reward, or if I have a hard day, it's not a coping mechanism. That's something that it's really important for me to keep food separate from that as well, so that an indulgence is a pleasure moment that is disconnected from pain. That is something, you know what, I feel like a treat for myself, and I'd like to have some chocolate. So I do. Exercise is another area where I have always been challenged. First of all, I have some injuries from childhood sports that still plague me in my ankles and knees. I have a back issue that will be with me my entire life. I have early onset rheumatoid arthritis. So these are all really difficult challenges to deal with when it comes to exercising in a healthy way. As I've mentioned before, I walk primarily right now, but I do want to get back into running because I love the feeling of running and how strong my body feels when I'm able to get up to speed and maintain it. And that runner's high is definitely a thing. I normally achieve it around 8 kilometers. So getting my body back up to that stage of exhilaration is something that is one of my goals. So that's part of it, that setting my goals is around feelings. I want to feel a runner's high again. Therefore, I need to get up to running 8 kilometers in one session. So right now I'm walking, and I've just started incorporating more running because I've been out of practice for quite some time. The challenge that I have is that, the challenge here that I have is that I used to be running quite a bit on a daily basis. Twice a day, I would run at least 10 kilometers. And if that sounds unhealthy, then you nailed it. It is. I definitely did not need to be running that every single day, but I was. And that was part of my attempts to lose weight. Now I just want to get back to a state where I can rekindle my love of running and experience the joy of running that I used to experience in a way that helps me feel more fulfilled, rather than is something I have to do to try and better myself. The self-talk that has accompanied a lot of this journey has been very negative. So negative self-talk can really derail a lot of progress that we make, in that it's inside our minds, and it's something that almost feels like an attack. Depending on where I'm at in the day, how tired I am, it feels like the negative self-talk creeps in more and more as I am less energized, less able to be vigilant for it and try and talk it down. So some strategies that I use is I try to change the voice in my head that is giving me negative self-talk, or I name it in a mocking way. that I read once that someone would call it Donald Trump in their head. It would just be like, oh my God, shut up, Donald. Whenever the voices got, I say voices not in a clinical sense, but just that negative self-talk, when those voices of our own reached up and began hurting us emotionally. This part might be a bit disturbing, so I apologize, but one thing that my negative self-talk says is it calls me a bitch quite a lot. And I'll call myself names and tell me to like get moving, you fat ass, and things like that. So it's really negative, and even saying it out loud right now is actually a little bit painful. And I feel like I'm confessing something to my therapist, so I apologize for using you guys as cheap therapy. Not that cheap, this camera was really expensive. So I'll call myself names. I will try to encourage myself with those names, like keep moving, you fat bitch, like things like that, that ostensibly just like trying to be encouraging with ourselves is fantastic, but using that kind of language towards ourselves, I mean, like imagine saying that to your mom. She'd be really disappointed in you. And I feel like if you can't say the words that you say to yourself, to your grandmother even, you should probably not be saying them, because that is not loving, that is not caring, and that is not respectful. And the ultimate goal that I have for myself and for anybody that I love is for them to feel loving, caring, and respectful towards themselves, so that they can be happy with who they are. You know, I want to be happy with who I am and see the beautiful person that I am and recognize them and respect them for it. And I just use pronouns really strangely, but I'm going to leave it because whatever. Negative self-talk is definitely a roadblock and is something that we need to train, or I need to train myself out of. And outside of changing the voice, like giving it a mocking name, one thing that I like to do is incorporate in my daily practice affirmations. I don't like to use affirmations as a band-aid. I don't like to use affirmations to work with one specific issue and then just let it go. I like affirmations to be a continuous process of speaking lovingly to myself. So the first challenging affirmation that I ever did was to look myself in the eye in the mirror, which makes me very uncomfortable. And I'm sure it makes a lot of other people uncomfortable, not just for horror movie reasons, but also self-love reasons. And so I would look myself in the eye in the mirror and say, I love you. And that would make me cry. And it might make you cry too if you try it. But that is the beginning. Being able to say that we love ourselves is just the beginning of actual self-love. So I would recommend, if you've never used affirmations, start with that one, because it is so powerful, it is so strong, and it is so painful sometimes to work through all of the feelings that come up when I say, I love you to myself, and feel anger or hatred or disgust, and have to ask myself, why do I feel those things? How have I learned to direct those emotions at myself? So not just facing those questions, but instead of worrying about facing those questions, I would like to go deeper. I like to say, I love you, Alethea. You are beautiful. You are wonderful. You are fantastic. You are a strong, powerful woman, and you make me proud every day. And it gets easier. The more compliments I pile on myself, the easier it is to give them, and the more I believe them. Try that yourself. Please look in the mirror, do that one hard challenge of saying, I love you, and then continue. Give yourself all of the compliments that you wish you'd hear every day. You can hear them from yourself, and they are just as valid. They are just as moving. They are just as wonderful, and they are just as meaningful. I'm going to continue working on my body journey. I don't want to call it a weight loss journey, because I'm not, while I do wish to be within a healthier range, I'm trying not to focus as much on the number of my weight. So I don't like to call it a weight loss journey, but it is definitely, well, let's rename it. Let's call it the body love journey. So this is my body love journey. And I think I would like to check in on a relatively regular basis to see where I'm at on that body love journey, and give some, not only accountability to myself on being more loving towards myself, but see what challenges come up and how I'm struggling and how those sort of experiences might help you with the ones that you're having as well. Thank you so much for joining me, Angel. I hope you are the best you that you can be right now.